we treat sleep like a luxury, something that we can cut short and squeeze in more work and entertainment. But honestly, sleep is one of the most important commodities and things for your brain that I think we all take for granted. Welcome to It's the Good Life, your practical guide to young adulting. My name is Josh. This is Anthony and David, and today we're talking about sleep and rest, which is exactly what I want to do right now.
Shortage of that.
Yeah.
Around the holiday times.
How have you guys been sleeping lately?
Pretty horribly.
You said there was such a big smile on your face.
Well, I think it's in exchange for other things that are really good.
Okay.
I think that's the nuance
An
to
exchange.
it. Just with traveling recently, it's been a lot of like jet lag, going to the East Coast and then coming back, and it's like it's trying to always catch up with this thing called sleep. At least that's for me.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the phrase catch up.
Yeah.
Like it's something that you can catch up on.
Yes.
Oh, we should talk about if that's even a possibility.
Is that a possibility?
Today.
Oh.
But
I've been also sleeping pretty poorly.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's because like I'm anticipating this next season. And I think it's keeping me awake because I'm just like, have you guys had those nights where you're like sitting in bed and you're just like looking at the ceiling, you're like, I want to sleep and I'm tired but I can't. Like that's literally been me the past like 3 or 4 nights. I'm just like,
Yeah.
somebody knock me out, like punch me in the face so I can go to sleep.
Same boat. I think we all just have terrible sleep. I think recently.
You're like a crazy night owl.
But the thing
By
is,
choice,
I am.
right?
I am.
So-
I do enjoy
So what is
being
that
a night
about?
owl. It's interesting now because I think depending on the atmosphere, like if there are other people that I'm sleeping with, like if it's roommates or if it's like family, I feel like I sleep at a different time compared to if I'm like sleeping solo. And I think like even if I'm backpacking, sleeping on the trail, I'll sleep a lot earlier than my normal night owls like out in the city. So if I sleep 3, 4 a.m. normally, you know, if I'm out backpacking, I'll push 9, 10. Because the thing is...
Wait, back up. You said you would stay up the entire night?
Well, normally.
So normally you sleep at 3 and 4 a.m.
Like 3 or 4 is like a healthy average.
Holy cow.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's not gonna be, once again, depending on the situation. I feel like when I go back home to Hawaii, it's gonna be different. Like I feel maybe around like midnight will be probably the new normal, probably because of time difference and
So that's
families
a choice
around.
for you though. Like you prefer like full control of your schedule. You will choose to sleep at 3 or 4 a.m.
Yeah. But of course, when there are more days that I'm actually really tired, my body will be like, okay, you need to sleep at 1:30, 1, 2, and it's like, okay, I'll listen to you and I'll go sleep at that time.
What?
Yeah, but it's like
I'm just
easy
finding
for
about
me to
this
push.
now.
Yeah,
no.
I'm finding about this now too.
Actually?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I
I
didn't
know,
know.
at least you knew.
Well, I knew like every time I would text you, I'm like, why is he texting me back? I'm at work. What are
Yeah.
you doing? You should be sleeping. But
So I didn't know it was a
now
choice.
I guess the verdict is out. You're just up during that time.
I'm up during
So
that time.
if you had the choice,
Yeah.
you would absolutely go to bed at 3 to 4 a.m. I could toss it back to you. What time would you go to bed if you had the choice?
9
a.m. I mean
no.
p.m.
I very much am a morning person, but with respect to my job as a night shift worker, I'm very much forced to go against the grain and be a night owl, like completely awake all night. But if I had the choice, full freedom over my schedule, full like didn't have to go to work, didn't have anything to worry about, I would sleep at 9 and wake up at like 4 or 5 a.m. Like I love the quiet early morning, the morning dew, the dark before the sun even rises. Like those few hours are like golden hour for me.
Yeah.
That's hands down like what my schedule I think would preferably be.
Yeah.
But given night shift working, it's all over the place. That's just kind of how it is.
I think like I wouldn't necessarily say like 3 a.m., 3 a 4 a.m. is like my preference. If I could sleep earlier, it would be probably most preferred. I mean, I like that 9 window. For me, it'd probably be like 10 to 11 window. But yeah, I think I just find myself around that average of 3 to 4 a.m.
Sure.
No, I hear what you're saying. Like, there's an ideal that you would prefer to have, but just because of your circumstances, because of your schedule, because of maybe even habit too. Like, that's just what you find yourself at.
Yeah.
You know, you're like 4 a.m. You're like, all right, here we go. You know, but then there's also the other circumstance where it's like there's not really a choice for Anthony, right? Like he has to sleep during the day and he has to be awake all night.
Yeah.
Maybe a question I'll pose to both of you guys, just out of curiosity, coming from someone who has a remote, relatively consistent,
Compared to us.
average
Yeah.
sleeping schedule, right?
Uh,
How has your sleeping schedule affected your daily life? So going to bed at 3 a.m., 4 a.m.,
Yeah.
I'd imagine if you want to get your usual hours, will push you back into the day,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Same thing with you, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know personally, but for the viewers, how has that? So for both of you guys, I don't know.
I think for me personally, the process, yeah, it definitely does push me into the day. And then so like if I was like sleeping this at 3 a.m. back at home, my dad would be like, "You're burning daylight, wake up." But for me, I think being a night owl, I'm very productive during those hours of like getting work done. I like to lock in, focus, deep reflection time. So that's where a lot of that inner work, as for why probably I'm most likely staying up. I think there's a lot of security and healing for me during that time. But yeah, and I think consistency of that schedule, it does push into the day, so it can affect the way that like my life would go as far as like plans or events. But I think knowing that that can be an average for me, like 3 to 4 a.m. of sleep time, or starting when to sleep, is knowing ahead of time like how to plan and be more efficient about like usage of time and where that's being spent. So if I know the next day I have like an event that I have to go to, if that's like for a specific community or a specific, fundraiser, then it's like I'll make sure that, I don't sleep way too late, and then I get the decent amount of hours of rest that I need in order to kind of tackle that day.
Yeah.
I would agree. I mean, I think with my life, it's like it could be tough. Like, not to, some people are going to think I'm crazy saying this, but last week there was a day that I stayed up for 31 hours straight.
Yeah, I was there for that.
Yeah, and like by 24 hour, you're already fading out, but you're just like pushing yourself to really go the extent of it. But I think to answer your question, it does absolutely affect the way I live my life, because like the different hats that I wear, for one, like being a bodybuilder, like there's certain things you have to eat, you have to work out, there's a certain lifestyle you have to live, and to make that compatible as a night shift nursing worker that works 3 12-hour shifts at night, it tends to be a very fine line between like having structure in your life and being very strict about your boundaries, which are things that we've talked about in the past. But for me, it's always a priority of health, because night shift workers already kind of take the shorter end of the stick with that. Just because you're working against your biological clock, which is interesting and something else I can get into. But yeah, with me, I always prioritize sleep before my shifts, not so much after, but being able to do the things that I still do, because most of life people live during the daytime. But I find that for me, like doing deep work and really focused things, I do that best in the morning. I just know myself that way. And late into the night, like what I'm doing most of my creative and like editing work, because that's when the crazy ideas flow. Like at 1 a.m., like I just have these random thoughts and things come up, and sometimes they're really good ideas. And so those are times when I tend to do that kind of work and focus on that. And you can really get in the zone there. And you check the watch, like, whoa, it's 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
As I always tell David, it's like, oh, when 3 p.m. becomes 3 a.m., it's like, where did the time go, But yeah, to answer your question, I think it totally does make a huge effect on your lifestyle.
What's interesting between what both of you guys said is the pattern between how it seems like your most creative point is late in the evening, right? And it's like, it's not a coincidence to me, because this is also not the first time I've heard it just from you guys, just in general, but other people who work night shift, right? Like there is something different about the deep, like work that you could do late at night or really early in the morning compared to midday, right? Like there is a different sort of silence that you have at 2 a.m. than you do at 2 p.m. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting to hear how perhaps like as an outcome of these choices, whether by choice or not by choice, how your guys' creative outlets have sort of maneuvered into not only like finding focal points in the evening to be, super creative or really focused, right? Or reflective, but also that you've like found enjoyment in those times too. Because I think like my initial gut reaction to being night shift which is a possibility, a good possibility, is like,
Welcome to
oh
the
my
club.
god, yeah. I'm like, oh man, like that's gonna be such a hard adjustment. But like hearing the different perspectives that you guys have, especially being really, really late night people, you could argue, it's just a more of a positive spin on it. Of like, no, there is benefit to that.
I think it really is how you see it. I think with me starting night shift as a night shift worker, night shift as a nurse was like a huge rude awakening of like, I don't want to do this. That's the initial, I think, mindset that I took, and I resonate with that for sure. Because who wants to be up at night when they could be sleeping, right? Like that's genuinely the thing. But you know, like an example of that was interesting because as a bodybuilder, when I started bulking, I was like, well, now I have all these extra hours in the night to eat. Like it gives me more time. It gives me, and instead of seeing it as a disadvantage, I saw it as an advantage for me to have like another 12 hours for me to fit in even more calories than the average person. So that's just the way I like leverage my schedule to benefit me, as opposed to someone that only has a limited like 9 to 5 schedule awake during normal times.
Yeah.
The other thing about working night shift as a benefit is, one, you're always against traffic. Two, they tend to say like, since you're not in the sun as often, your skin doesn't age as quickly. So you'll see like night shift workers, a lot of them like will be a lot older, but they're like, they won't
look
have
a
a
lot
lot of
younger.
wrinkles because they're
Yeah.
away from the sun.
Yeah.
The other thing is being awake at a time when most people are sleeping. And that's a lot of time when I think creative work happens, but also when the world is quiet. And so that gives you that space to kind of just be and just do your own thing without as much distraction. And then you're sleeping when the world's awake. So it's almost flip-flopped.
Yeah.
So there definitely are pros and cons. It's definitely took me a while to see that, but then being able to like focus more on the positive, as we've talked about in the last episode, of memories and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, for you, Josh, too, I think turning over the question, because interestingly enough, I think you have the most kind of normal schedule among the three of
Relatively.
us.
Yeah.
What is sleep like for you in terms of nursing school? And how do you balance that
yeah.
with the crazy like holidays and the family that you have, and making sure you have time for everything, as well as taking, like, does sleep go in the back burner for you as a nursing student? How do you balance that?
That's a good question. Before I get into that, I do appreciate that as potentially very likely being night shift, like this positive outlook, because I definitely have had, and same from you, David. It's like there is something to be valuable, and not only from like in terms of like the patient load, but also just you know, which is another big part of it too, right? It's just patients are sleeping. It's a little bit slower paced, which is nice, right?
Yeah.
But also just like the value of being able to reflect in a different space than maybe I wouldn't have access to during the day. I think that's a really good ways to reframe. Whoa, reframe. You won't get that reference unless you watch the last episode. If you remember.
Oh my goodness,
That's
this
good.
guy.
Whoa.
Oh, this guy with the dad jokes.
I've gotten comfortable
Going
enough to start pulling the
crazy.
dad jokes.
No.
But
Watch out.
to answer your question in terms of sleep, I think that I really struggle with sleeping when I'm anxious. So like I think the problem with being anxious is it's not limited by time. You know, so like right now, like I'm anxious about something that's happening in like a month, like, but I'm losing sleep over it right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the losing sleep comes over like my brain being really active at night. Like I'm just sitting in bed, I'm just like thinking and processing and visualizing like what's gonna happen and hope it goes well, and like sort of anticipating. And I've kind of struggled with that throughout nursing school. Like I'll have an exam a week later and I'm just thinking about everything that I'm studying for, like running through concepts in my mind, running through meds in my mind, like side effects and everything. It's like I'm just, like my brain won't turn off. And I know I'm definitely not the only person who struggles with that. But I think that in terms of sleeping, I've found that the more I prioritize sleeping, the better off I am. Like just correlationally.
Yeah.
Like more I sleep, better. For me, it's like 8.5 hours is like chef's kiss. Like if I get under that, I'm like fine. But if I get that, I'm rock and rolling. You can ask. Go ahead.
Well, you're someone that you're someone that also advocates for naps too. So
That
like,
is
what? How
also
does that
true.
play into the total of the 8.5? Like, is that
Yeah.
discounted? Like,
Yeah.
I got a 30-minute nap, so then I can
Yeah,
cut off
yeah.
the 8.
Big question.
Yeah.
In terms of seeing like sleep almost as like a whole, I'm not sure if you take naps too, David. If you're a napper gang, but yeah, I never took naps because for me, like, I felt like I woke up always more groggy until I found out the power of the power of power naps. It's like short, like sleeping in short bits, like
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, like, do you guys nap, or is that something that's like only for,
nap
people
a
like
little.
5 and younger?
Hey.
That's what I use. That's how I used to
Kidding.
think about it, though.
Kidding, yeah.
I was like, man, like, yeah, that like naps are for kids. But then I was like, as an
Right.
adult, I think you're overstimulated, and it's good to kind of process and take a break from your long day.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is if I start really early within the day, and I had all my meals, I go through like the events that I have planned or my agenda itinerary, that I typically get a little bit tired during midday, and then that's like a perfect time for like a very short little nap.
For sure.
Yeah. There's definitely I think I have this phrase with some of my friends where it's like, did you take that nap or did that nap take you?
Oh,
like like that sleep where you wake up and you're marked and you forget where you are and you have no idea what time it is.
Oh my goodness.
Like I think there is something to be said about the amount of time that you sleep if you're going to power nap. I find that I tend to sleep after I work out, which is like midday. So it's like, and I need it. Like it's now part of my routine. But there was a good hold on. There was a good chunk of my life. Where the naps were like counterproductive. So like when I was in middle school and high school, I would come and sleep for like 3 hours.
Wow.
And then I'd be up and I'd be awake until like 2 a.m. and then I'd go to sleep. It was like constantly this like balancing act between being awake and sleeping and not getting quality sleep in either category. So according to the research I did, the perfect nap is 10 to 20 minutes. And because it keeps you in that light, which just seems like really short,
That's
but
good,
it keeps you in that light stage of sleep. Versus when you start going into like REM cycles, that's when it starts being disruptive because you're not actually trying to stay in that REM sleep. You're just like basically going into deep sleep. It's like you jumping in the deep end and then coming right out. Versus like actual sleep, you want to stay in the deep end for as long as you can. And so it just really depends. I think one thing that I wanted to get into, just as we're moving through this, is the perspective of sleep as monetary, like as it having a value. So it's really interesting how like you were talking about earlier with like seeing if you have an event like the following day. Right? And you're like, oh, I can waste around a couple hours.
right.
Like you describe it, and I think a lot of people do this. They describe it as if it has some sort of monetary value, right? Like there's a measurable monetary value that you can trade off. Right. But I think something sort of the narrative that I want to push against that narrative and say that sleep is not monetary. Like it's not something that you can exchange for more time to do work and whatever.
Right.
But it's like Anthony said, where it's like when he's preparing for work, he has to sleep. It's not a choice. The amount of sleep is also not a choice,
Right.
And so, go ahead.
Well, I think as a monetary sense, it's the interesting thing of like trading. Because I think that's often sometimes how I view sleep as well. It's like trading sleep for other things.
Right.
Like if I'm getting off on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m., getting home at 8, like am I trading sleep for church, or is it better off for me to sleep because if I'm going to church, I'm going to be nodding off anyways. And those are the kind of questions I ask myself at the end of like a 12-hour day is like, do I want to extend this 12-hour like day? Is it productive for me to keep on going?
Right.
If the trade-off is getting less sleep, right? And sometimes that's a yes, sometimes that's a no. But I like that as a night shift worker, I have that choice. As someone who works day shift, they're working during day shift hours, during church hours, so they don't even have that choice. But another benefit of working the night is like you get to you get the option to push yourself a little further if you want to, not that you have to. So I think having that option is always an interesting thing to have. But kind of gives you a little more freedom in a sense with your scheduling, or at least my scheduling.
Here's a quote for you guys. Sleep is when you may or may not agree with this, but sleep is when your brain pays its debts and consolidates its profits.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I agree that I think that training your sleep probably isn't something that we should do. There is a lot of significance and restoration that goes on with your body and repair when you're supposed to sleep, right? And so, yeah, it's interesting for me because, given if you're a person who functions as like a night owl, like you're more active during the night, or if you're someone who functions more during the day, there's differences for that. But I think the narrative of like just kind of staying up late with the creativity, I think it's great, but I also probably don't highly recommend that. Just for our bodies, like if you're basically overtuning what your body's naturally supposed to go through and cycle, and we're going against that.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy, and so I think there's a strong encouragement of understanding what you're really trading off and how that will affect you overall in health. And then so that's why it's a difficult question too when you're asked like to do night shift. And in the medical field, I mean, it's dire. We need people to do that, right? So I think that's something that people in the medical field have to wrestle with. But I think also for a job like myself, like I work hospitality, so a lot of that looks like me staying till like 1, 2 in the morning sometimes to clean, closing shift to make sure that opening shift has all their things prepared and ready. I mean, yeah, that's what it looks like. But you sleep at 3 sometimes because maybe the drive back home and stuff. But yeah, it's just I do think that whole sleep debt concept is just a really big conversation to kind of talk over.
Well, sleep debt then becomes like, at what point does it become sleep bankruptcy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so it's like, I think that's when it becomes like chronic sleep deprivation, where you're constantly deficiting every day.
Yeah.
And then ultimately you get to that point where you're just sleep deprived just as a normal, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm sleep deprived, I tend to get a little bit more annoyed a little more easily, right? And that's not any particular person. It's just my new baseline. You know what I mean? If I'm being completely transparent about that. And I guess something I want to pose to you guys, like, what happens when you're sleep deprived? What have you noticed with yourself?
I can resonate with that for sure. I think part of being sleep deprived is for me, it's wanting just to be by myself. It's wanting,
like isolating?
Yeah, I think in some ways isolating, but yeah, I think noticing myself being a little bit less patient, a little more short-tempered, a little more short with people in general. That's also what happens like when you get stressed, when things happen in your life too, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I think I realized that there's less capacity to do things with, intention, like we talked about in last episode. The importance of like creating memories.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to be intentional going into a situation when I only got like 3 hours of sleep the night before. It's really hard for me to record for 2 hours for a podcast if last night I just, I got a few hours of sleep, right? Like I think that all plays into the quality of our life, what we're doing, and it shows. So I think sleep is, like a big part of how you take care of yourself, and it definitely does bleed out and show on the outside for sure. Yeah.
What about you, David? What happens when you are sleep deprived?
Yeah, I think I can agree with being short-tempered probably, and probably not thinking as straight, judgmental is probably off.
Oh, that's another thing too.
Yeah. It's maybe like similar effects to alcohol. I mean, alcohol is a substance that you take in to your system, it affects it. But I think if you're not getting like naturally what your body needs, like sleep, I think similarly, you kind of fall short of those very executive functions that you need to get through the day.
I think there's a stat out there that says something about like being sleep deprived is equivalent to a certain amount of like alcohol, like a blood alcohol level of you driving. Like it's
like you get basically the same.
Yeah, it's the same effect of
level.
you being like less alert on the road.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the caliber of like seriousness that I think sleep holds. As much as we tend to downplay that importance sometimes.
It's really interesting. I wanted to
good
note
point.
this
Right.
this sort of cultural shift that's occurred probably in the last century or two in relation to sleep, right? Like I think back it was before electricity and light bulbs. Like people would
Thomas Edison.
wake up when the sun comes up,
Yeah.
and they would go to sleep when the sun goes down.
Right.
And that would equate to around 12 to 14 hours of sleep per day that people would get as the average, right? Like you don't work at night because you can't see anything. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like there's no reason to do what you need to do because you can't see anything, right? But it's interesting how like that culture that valued sleep has now transitioned, you know, once electricity became a thing and light bulbs became a thing, where it's like, oh, now we can work at night. Now we don't need the sun to work at night. It's sort of changed this perspective about sleep. And even nowadays, I would even argue that it's completely on its head.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's kind of like, especially as I don't know about you guys, but as a kid, it was kind of a cool thing to stay up, right? It was like, oh, I stayed up till 12. Whoa, you stayed up till 12 a.m. You're such a cool kid. Like, there's something that seems to be cool or appealing about being able to stay up later, and then even an extension of that to be productive, being late.
Right.
You know, like I'm sure that there's one celebrity that I've heard about, and even about waking up early. There's one celebrity. You guys may track it or not. Like he notoriously wakes up at like 3 a.m. every day to like work out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know, like he wakes up extremely early, and
Yeah.
there's something that is, I think, meant to be significant about the fact that, oh, I wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like that's something that's really kind of struck me about this attitude that we have about sleep. Not only as thinking about it like as some sort of monetary value,
Yeah.
but like even to the extent of saying that not sleeping is actually a good thing, but it's
Yeah. Wait. So what exactly are we getting at with sleep? I think
like the
we're-
culture around sleep. You
I
know,
see,
like
I
like
see.
is it cool to not sleep?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah.
So how do we push against that narrative in a culture that promotes
yeah.
that not sleeping is a good thing when it actually is the opposite?
Well, I think one of those simple things of, you know, taking the action to set that time aside, and then, I mean, especially if you live with yourself, I think there's a better sense of priority and responsibility. You can achieve that goal of,
To sleep
okay, I need
well
to sleep
intentionally.
well, sleep earlier. But I think what I've recognized is if you're living in a room with two guys, if you're living in a house with multiple roommates, it's going to be a bit harder, right? Given like, especially if they don't respect the boundaries and rules of like quiet hour or all of these like laid down foundational rules for house. I think it's going to be difficult for you to get the rest that you need. It's so hard because you kind of have to in sync your body with every single person there, and then if you don't get that, you have to go out of your way to find things that help limit the distractions or the things that pull away. So, you know, turning on the lamp rather than the full light above, or, you know, grabbing one of those like masks that go over your eyes, you know, wearing earmuffs.
Yeah.
You have to do so much extra work, right? But I feel like if you're going to get quality, beautiful rest, especially if you're living by yourself, I think you can meet that priority, and it should look like, you know, you don't have to limit yourself with all of those things that would help you to get quality rest. Like it should just be you and the stillness and quietness of this space on your bed or on your floor, like whatever your sleeping quarters are, and then get the quality of what that has to offer.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because you mentioned a very practical ways to promote sleep hygiene, which I think was what kind of a focal point. And it's very interesting because Anthony has a very standardized, practical way to promoting sleep hygiene, the 3-2-1 rule.
Yeah, we talked about that in
the car
episode.
Yeah. Do you want to reiterate that just for the sake of
Yeah. I mean, just to build off on David though, I think like being able to, I think part of like kind of backtracking too is like the sleep versus being awake, and being like a kid that really wants to be awake. It's like cool because I feel like as a kid you see sleep as like this thing that you just have to do. There's no value in it.
Yeah.
Like all the fun happens when you're awake. Like who wants to sleep? Sleeping is just you like laying in bed, closing your eyes. But yeah, I think to go back to go into like the sleep, like for me, like the 3-2-1 rule simply is just like 3 hours before bed, just like cutting off food, and then 2 hours before bed, cutting off like water, and then 1 hour before bed, being able to cut out like any kind of electronics or blue light use is kind of like the rule of thumb for sleeping. Not that I always follow it myself, but yeah, in terms of like sleep hygiene, that's something that's been important. But I think to turn the conversation more into this idea of like that culture of resting and the light bulb, because I think the light bulb was a great invention. Pros and cons, right? But I'm curious to ask you guys too, like, what role does hustle culture have to play in this conversation of rest? Like, do you guys, I'm sure you guys subscribe in some ways to this like work hard mentality, but sometimes like it's hard to avoid working hard in spite of trading that off for sleep, which is also an important aspect of working hard. So, I mean, how do you guys tend to do that? Whether it's in nursing school of like balancing, should I study another 2 hours or sleep 2 hours? Like that's a trade-off. Should I study for the NCLEX or should I take a nap? You know, should I, you know, for instance, do more research on what I need to do in order for applying for jobs, or should I, you know, get that rest and go to bed? Or should I stay up to have a late night conversation with a friend that I might not be able to see for a while, or should I go to sleep because that's, you know, like how do you guys go about making those decisions in a hustle culture almost way?
I think what I'm starting to understand is I think trade-offs are only very clear when you don't manage your time very well. And I think that's where it comes down to, oh, I'm sacrificing my sleep for this, studying extra 2 hours. And I think that's why we have to maximize and make the most of the daylight that we have, because given that, you know, our time and body naturally should function during the day, I think that there's so much that we can get done. And if we optimize and prioritize all of those different set things, I think we're not going to have that mindset of like, oh, I'm trading off sleep for this. But when it does get down to that point, I think recognizing, okay, if I'm hit at the wall and it's like, okay, am I going to study for the 2 more hours because I need this extra studying, or, you know, am I going to get this sleep and extra rest because, you know, I'm tired and I need that sense of recuperation. You know, I want to push that, like, sleep should probably just be that really big priority. Like, I would even go so far as to say, like, you know, that 2 extra hours probably isn't as worth it. You know, if anything, get the extra hours of sleep and then, I don't know, maybe even work to wake up earlier in the morning, even though that's that trade-off too. It's like, okay, you'll get 2 hours of sleep more, but then not necessarily because you're cutting that off and you're going to study more. So you're basically like, it seems like a lose-lose. And see, that's the thing is, I would hate to put myself in that situation, given that that's what I have to trade because I didn't manage my time well.
Yeah.
And though I think once again the set priority is like, okay, sleep then just has to be that, like, almost like the requirement that you have to hit. You know, without hitting that requirement, you're not really going to be able to kind of move on forward to all of these other things that you have to like necessarily and as a necessity achieve, get done.
Yeah, I mean, well, before I bring it over to Josh, I think that's almost surprising for me to hear. Coming from you too, David, because I know you as someone who's very spontaneous, and sometimes spontaneity isn't always compatible with the strict structural rules of getting your sleep in. Yeah. Like, I just remember there's times and moments, more than once, where you you know, would choose to stay up and have more of a spontaneous moment, a later night with some friends out, doing some things, you know, more spontaneous. Whether it's exploring uncharted territories of a college campus, or going out late night into the middle of a street and just doing boy things, whatever it is. But, like, you know, that kind of, it interests me that you answered in that way of, because you also have this other aspect of you that is super spontaneous and just does things on a whim. So
I think, well, to respond back with that, I think it's going to be very different for how consistently you do that. So I'm spontaneous, yes, but I'm not spontaneous ever all the time.
Got it.
And see, that's why, like, I'm not saying, oh, I'm tracking that I'm sacrificing my sleep every single time because I'm going out on spontaneous adventures, exploring, you know, all these places every single night. Like, no, that would be something I strongly discourage, right? But the thing is, like, I think we're understanding to a point. There's only so much you can do, and also you have to recognize how much you are doing in that.
Got it.
And I actually am a lot structured than you think. There's so much, like, especially when I was in school, GCal was just up to a brim. Like I had like 50 color-coded like things of birthdays and celebrations and
GCal.
you know,
That took me a
sports,
second.
intramurals.
Like,
Google Calendar.
Google
Okay.
Calendar, yeah.
Yes.
Gigacalories.
Yeah, the GCal.
Yeah.
We'll call it the GCal.
The GCal.
GCal.
And you know, it like I'm sure if you guys like utilize those calendar lists, right, or those set priority lists,
Oh,
it
yeah.
looks
I
different,
do.
right?
Oh yeah.
And you just imagine like with the structure of your life, okay, given my time here, how well does this almost like set you up for your sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I think that's a
good.
really good question.
That's good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Turn it over to you, Josh. Take me through like a little bit of the time management of like a nursing school student that
Yeah.
balances school and you know relationships and things like pretty well, I would say. But you know, still like honestly with being honest with the struggle of
Yeah.
having to do that.
Well, I actually think I want to flesh out your question a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that I'll pose this back to David too, if he wants to answer, because I think that up to this point we've been talking about rest pretty linearly, right? Like rest is just sleeping, but like I think something that I've learned from you guys is like rest is so much more diverse, right? Like you have like social rest, you have emotional rest, you have spiritual rest, right? And then you have physical rest, right? Like those are all like elements that fully encapsulate your body's need to sleep, rest, right?
Right.
And so I think that there have been many times in my life where, especially in the hospital setting, right? Like there's this hustle, like you just gotta like get through stuff. And there's so many experiences I have that are so draining, right? Like socially, right? Like if you see a kid who like I saw this kid the other day who was like burned by a full pot of boiling water, you know, and like that's like super emotionally draining to see that. I'm physically fine, I'm socially fine, but like emotionally that's hard. That takes a lot out of me, you know. And then I go to school, and then I go to a class for 8 hours, and I have to take an exam after that, and then I'm like academically drained, you know. And so it's like I think that thinking about to your original question of like hustle culture and like trying to push against that narrative, especially in an environment like the hospital and being in nursing that is so reflective of that culture in many ways, right? I think that I've really tried to advocate for finding my people and my routines that help me to find rest, right? And I say routines to find rest because I'm not speaking about just sleeping, right? So like I go to therapy. That's a huge part of like my social, emotional, spiritual rest, right? Because I'm engaging in like sort of unpacking and unloading this stuff that I've experienced with somebody who is trained to do exactly that, right? But then I think it's also, again, like I think the physical rest is pretty implied, but then like there's also I think academically, if I can put it academically, resting is like I'm currently in a gap right now of no school, right? So I'm really taking the time to not do school, you know, like to, you know, maybe if I do study, it's like very, very minute and intentional and dedicated time. But then after that, it's like, don't even look, think, talk, academics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's valuable because I remember as a nursing student in summers, like everyone would talk about studying ahead.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, well, it's summer, like, you know, but there's this like there was this tension of should I use that time wisely,
right?
Or is the most wise way to use that time is to just really just take a step back, right? And it seems like that was kind of your approach, is like which I think is really healthy to almost set a boundary with what allowing that time in your life.
I mean, I guess the question that I asked myself, and you guys kind of hinted at this, right? Of like, would I rather this or would I rather this, right? And I think that was very much a question I asked myself so often was, would I rather invest rest now or sacrifice trying to make it up later? You know what I mean? Because I always found like there were a very specific example of this, academically speaking, was then spring last year, or during my program, we went from the spring semester right into the summer semester with no break. Like it was just one weekend and then we suddenly were in another term, right? And I found that like going into that term, not having rest, like we got a spring break, but I just spent that studying and working ahead. Like I was burnt out from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
And that was an awful way to set me up for success that semester. It was a real struggle, like that entire 10, 12 weeks of that summer session. And then once I got to we got like 3 weeks off between the summer and fall semester, I was like, I had nothing. And I was like so much in survival mode and like sleep deprivation mode that it took me probably 2 weeks, 2 of those 3 weeks to actually get back to a baseline, you know? And so I learned my lesson then. Like I cannot, like rest is such a valuable commodity, and I can't take it for granted. Like if I have the opportunity to rest, I just gotta lean into it, 100%, because may not have the time later, you know. It's a very opposite mentality than like work now, sleep later. Mine's like sleep now, work later. You know what I mean?
I think with nursing, like night shift, it's almost that approach too. It's like if you don't sleep, you're not making it through the night. It is in some ways like just survival. Like
you will not survive.
Like you're just trying to make it through. It's like 12-hour shifts are no joke.
Those are no joke.
And if you're not, you will feel it. Like you'll crash at like 3 a.m. and it's like,
that's so true.
You're gonna just dread it.
So why, if you know that's going to be the outcome, why like set yourself up for failure? Is like basically what I told myself.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
Not to say that like sleep is that linear. You know. Or resting is that linear. Like I'll sleep 8 hours, therefore I'll be good.
Right.
Like there's sometimes when you'll sleep 8 hours and it'll be crap, like really bad sleep.
True.
You know?
True.
But there is something to be said about like not letting those opportunities to rest go to waste.
I mean, I love you bring into the conversation of the other ideas of rest. I think that's a really valuable aspect because that's you're right. Like in a lot of ways, our conversation is so focused on the linear just sleep as the main thing of rest. But rest, I think, also comes in so many different forms of rest.
Because they do tie into. I mean, because mainly there are your other areas of health. And this is one thing I really appreciate about Josh is like we both connect on understanding the importance of that and what exactly that is, you know, your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and your social health.
I missed mental. You're right.
Yeah. But all to say that's the important thing is within knowing those health areas that we have to attune to and tend towards. I mean, that gives us an understanding of like, okay, now that when we look at rest, given that those are like our 5 areas of health, how do we properly address that? Right. And I think a really good example that I can think off of my head that correlates the idea of like how important sleep is. I've noticed that throughout a day, no matter when I wake up, even if I wake up really late, like just before 12 p.m. or if I wake up at 7:30 a.m., if I know that very day, given those 2 circumstances, if I talk to a lot of people, like socialize, built a lot of relationship, I met a new friend, or, you know, like staff, I got to talk to the department head and have a really good conversation, and it was like very engaging. I know for me, if I go through a lot of that within a day, it'll take a lot of energy out of me. And so for certain, I'll sleep pretty good and pretty healthy, right? But if I limit a lot of that social, relational interaction, and maybe in a practical sense for our audience, like you can also recognize this perhaps, just maybe in your life, that it looks like that when you're walking by yourself, you know, more isolated or not necessarily engaging in the relational social aspects, that maybe you have more energy and therefore like you're not as drained, and then your sleep quality does have effect. And so maybe there are some stats and research, I'm not sure, behind that, but I think it would make sense. Like if you have definitely a lot more energy given out, I mean, I think the input of needing rest will probably be higher. It just makes sense. And that's just even speaking only on like that one emotional aspect, or more clearly probably 2, so your social and your emotional.
That's interesting that you mentioned like social burnout, and it's interesting too because like I think social burnout is like such a it's such a countercultural thing to recognize, because people are like, oh, just talk and build relationships and network, and like it's all about constantly like building social relationships, right? But at the same time, it is draining, right? And like to talk about hey, why don't you take a day for yourself, is so counterintuitive according to culture, right? Like, why spend a whole day on your own? What's the reason for that?
Yeah.
But the reason is like, I need to rest in this energy, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Something that, I'll say one thing. I wanted to point it to your direction, actually, is Anthony, with bodybuilding, the way that your body responds to rest is so important. And something that I want to like a life verse, I guess, according to the Gospel of Anthony.
Gospel.
That's
is,
not a real thing.
to work hard, you have to rest hard. Right? And like that's something that like I didn't experience until I started intentionally sleeping and taking days off from working out, that I actually started experiencing like the Mike Menser like level of growth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like you have, in order to grow, you actually need to rest.
Right.
Like it's an equation that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I mean, as we're rounding off here,
Yeah.
I think that is it's a big part. Like, there's nothing like you're deep into a cut and you're just like you'll feel it. Like you're always tired, and there's nothing. Like sleep is pretty much the only thing that really is gonna help you with that. Yeah, I think in terms of like a final takeaway for me is like, as an ICU nurse, resting isn't something that you always have available to you. It's something that you really have to intentionally set aside time for. And I think for me, the way that I interpret that is like, in the ICU, it's a very like high strung, high pressure environment. When there's a patient that's coding, when there's someone that's actively, heading towards the end of their life, you're drained, you're already having a long shift. There's no like, oh, I want to sit back and just like, I need a moment, right? No, you're running over to that room, hopping on the chest, and you're like doing CPR, right?
Wow.
There's no type of like, you just respond. But I think the question with that is like, then how do you still rest in that situation? How do you still find rest when almost like the extreme of it is like there's a life on the line if you don't act fast, right? It's almost like the epitome of like hustle. Like you have to, like there's a life on the line. And I think with that, it's almost like learning how to rest when you can. And I think that's the last point I land on is like, it like appreciating the moments where things are slow, because that might be that one time in the night, those 10 minutes where you can really center yourself, where you really get a chance to relax, slow down, and just take a breath.
Yeah.
And that might be all you get until the end of your shift, but that is what you have. That's what you take what you have. So anyways, leaving on that is just getting rest while you can, as much as you can.
I love that. Josh, you want to finish off with the last thought? And I'd love to pray.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one last thought I want to say is like, I think your rest comes from where you find it from, right? And I found that probably, I think a focal point, and not to be even corny about it, is like, I think God is the source of our rest, the source of real rest. And like that comes in, that goes for all centers of our lives, right? And I found that usually the most restful times I have are spending with people who I care about and care about me. But also like praying. Like praying's been such a huge part of my life. And I think this is for the first time in my life that I've actually prayed consistently every day for the past like 5 months. Like actually sat down and prayed.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to be like, I'm a Pharisee, I'm telling you that I'm praying. I'm saying it because like it's great. Like, and it works, and it brings you back to this ultimate goal of like, what am I doing this for? And I think that in of itself is replenishing. So I think that's kind of what I'll leave with.
And it's really nice
Take
for
a
us
leg.
to finish off with rest and sleep. I think just one last word that I want to share is to prioritize getting your rest, getting your sleep, and making sure you understand, is it worth it for those trade-offs, those sacrifices. But thank you, Anthony and Josh, for sharing that. I
thank
freaking
you,
love
Come on.
the insights going on here. But with that being said, let's head into prayer, close it off. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this space, and we thank you for this time that we get to be here, Anthony, Josh, and I. And thank you for the audience to be present and listening to this podcast. Thank you for this wonderful space that we can share and express the understandings and just anecdotal stories and backgrounds and histories and understandings of sleep and rest and what that does and how it influences and impacts our life. I pray for all those who are not getting good rest, that they may rest well and in your spirit. I pray that there be confidence and assurance in their sleep. And Father, for those who are getting good rest, to continue that path and to remain focused on maintaining a goodness in wellness. And as we finish off today, Lord, that we continue to go throughout the day, knowing that we can rest surely in you, given whatever difficulty and hardships that we face. And I pray this all in full confidence. We appreciate you and we will honor you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Alrighty, and that is going to be the end of the first half of season 2.
Yeah.
With episode 10.
Wow.
Thank you guys so much for watching. It's The Good Life, your practical guide to adulting. Don't forget to subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the uploads that we drop. And just look forward to the second half of the season. We'll be talking about more topics about the brain and exploring just different ideas. I think the brain is so complex, so interesting, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.